Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 203. We're talking about the recent NFL signings like Carson Wentz and Kyle Rudolph. And we're also going to be discussing the top five fantasy football stories heading into 2019 and what we expect from the fantasy season. Joined again by Kenny Ortiz of FantasyJabber.com. How's it going, Kenny?
Bro, I'm feeling great. I'm not in my office. For those who are regular watchers on the YouTubes, I am not in my office. Those who are listening to the audio, they don't care. But I'm in my apartment, so it's plain white. I'm gonna have to get some really cool, decals like you have if I'm gonna use my house to record rather than my office. So watch out for that. Maybe in the future I'll be able to have some cool Super Mario Brother decals.
We should get the Legend of Zelda ones, right? And this is Friday, so for those of you who watch the old Super Mario show with Captain Lou Albano, they used to do Zeldas on Friday, and those are all like the best ones always. And it was always depressing that Link never got to kiss Zelda, and it's very upsetting. I'm still traumatized from that in my childhood. But we were supposed to record last night. But then the Raptors and Raptors Warriors game ended, and I tried contacting you and I didn't hear from you. I didn't know if you were still alive or what. But so we're recording on a Friday afternoon. It's light, so like I don't have I've actual sunlight in my office for the first
It's
time.
remarkable. It's remarkable. Literally. Yeah, we were going to record late Friday or Thursday evening, and I just it was 10. I remember looking at my phone. It was exactly 10:48, and it was right after the game. Put my head down. I thought to myself, I'm just going to take a quick little rest for a few minutes, and then it literally felt like 2 minutes. I opened my eyes, and the sun was out, and I was in my clothes on my couch, still wearing jeans. ESPN is rolling on my TV, and I look at my phone, and I see missed calls and missed texts from Walt, and it's like 8:28 a.m. And I was like, literally, I've been here for like 9 hours. Who sleeps in their jeans, by the way? Who does that? Anyway,
it's horrible.
On their couch. Who does that? Who falls asleep on their couch?
I don't even wear jeans.
So that was me literally last night. So public apology to Walter Cherepinski. I stood you up. It's kind of like my last few girlfriends. I did to you what they do to me. Sorry, brother.
Okay, I got bad flashbacks from my history of women not answering me, but it's okay. I'll forgive and forget. All right, so like I said before, we have 4 signings to talk about. So the first one is near and dear to your heart. The Eagles re-signed Carson Wentz. 4 years, $128 million with $107 million guaranteed. It's the most guaranteed money ever for an NFL player. So what are your thoughts on this as an Eagles fan?
I can't talk too much about it. People will complain that I talk too much about the Eagles, so I gotta give limited thoughts.
That's true. Yeah, like even when breaking news happens, you can't talk about the Eagles. So
I am at first when I first saw this, the instant reaction I'm sure many people would have is, oh my gosh, it's a lot of money, and the team's not going to be hamstrung. They're not going to be able to sign better players, and we've seen this with teams that have too much cap space tied up in a quarterback, and then they can't build around the quarterback, and they're not good. We've seen this multiple times over the last decade. I think the most disgusting example of that is Matthew Stafford, but there's some other examples of that, right? We've seen that here. And then so that was my first initial reaction. You're just like, oh gosh, and he hasn't been healthy. You get nervous. So that's the initial reaction. But then when you start digging into the contract, you start realizing that it's actually structured very differently than most of the other deals. Most of the other deals replace existing money or existing years, and this deal does not. It's a 4-year pure extension, which we don't see nearly as much with the quarterback contracts over the last couple of years. And so they have 2 existing years that are very team friendly, and then it's an additional 4 years. So it's really like a 6-year deal. And then of the $107 million, actually it's only 61 real guaranteed because they're rolling guarantees. So it's sort of like at the end of year 2, then the bulk of it becomes guaranteed. But the reality is they could actually get out of this at the end of, before the extension actually kicks in. They could get out of this deal. It would cost them a lot of money. But if, let's say Carson Wentz, God forbid, gets injured this year and next year and he proves he can't stay healthy, they could actually get out of this deal at the end of the 2020 season. And basically it would cost them $61 million. Now, there's a huge cap hit, obviously, over 2 years. But you could get out of it if you needed to. Now, let's hope that doesn't as an Eagles fan, I hope that's not necessary. I hope that we're looking back saying he's underpaid. That's what I hope, right? He's won 4 straight Super Bowl MVPs. He's underpaid. That's my hope. So, but actually, when you look at the deal, it's actually far more team friendly than any of the other contracts that have been signed over the last few years by the contract. The average amount of cap hit over the next 6 years is right around 25 million and change, which is, it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's significantly less than what Russell Wilson got. It's less than David Carr. It's less than Jimmy Garoppolo's number per year, who, by the way, has last time I checked, hasn't won more than 2 games with the Niners yet. Right? Like how many games? I think he's won. I think he was like 2 and something when he got hurt, whatever it was. I don't know. So it's like I think the reality is like, okay, the risk is there, but it's much more team friendly than all those other deals. And I'm forecasting over the next 2 years, what is Jared Goff going to get paid? What is Patrick Mahomes going to get paid when he gets paid? I mean, I think what's Phillip Rivers' contract's going to be up? Like, what is he going to get paid? I think the realistic thing, what's going to happen, we're going to look back in 2 years or less, and Carson Wentz won't even be in the top 10 of paid quarterbacks, both in overall money and in salary cap hit. So the reality is they were already going to be on the hook over the next 2 years for about 32 million. So now they're on the hook for 61 million over 2 years. And if that pans out, then they'll be glad to pay the extra, 128 million over the last 4 years. I think overall, this is far more economical than any of the other deals. It's a risk, no doubt, because if he can't stay healthy, it sucks. But it's also a risk on Carson Wentz's perspective, right? What if he completely stays healthy this year, and he's an NFL MVP type of player, and he could have gotten more, right? What if he waits? If he could waited a year and been an MVP, he probably could have gotten 35 million a year, or he could have demanded what Russell Wilson got. But he can't make that demand right now. So it's a little risk. I think it's both parties taking a risk, both parties thinking we think it's going to work out. So I think overall this is really good. I think this is probably like a B plus A minus, because there is some risk, but it's a really, really team friendly deal for a guy who's proven he can be like an NFL MVP type of player.
Yeah, I give it a B plus as well. And something you mentioned at the end where, you're going to have, Wentz could have gotten more money, and, you're talking about the $35 million per season type of figure. So my friend John brought up a good point where, an underrated aspect of this deal is that it's going to drive up the prices of Jared Goff's contract and also Dak Prescott's contract. And the Prescott contract is obviously significant for Eagles fans, or, the Eagles in general, because if the Cowboys overpay for Prescott, that'll set them back, as it has with other quarterbacks. Whereas, Wentz, I would say when he's healthy, he's an elite quarterback. When Prescott's healthy, he's not an elite quarterback. He's maybe above average, maybe even average. Like I don't think too highly of Prescott, and I don't know of too many people in the know who do either. But now you're hearing that Prescott's asking for like 34 million a year, and it's, based on this contract, he might get it. I don't know if the Cowboys have a choice. Like, what are they going to do? Like, let him go? Or maybe do what the Redskins did with Kirk Cousins. So I think the Eagles giving Carson Wentz this contract could hurt other teams, and that might obviously benefit the Eagles if that happens. And you're right. I mean, this is obviously a risk. Carson Wentz hasn't been able to stay healthy. So yeah, I mean, this could totally backfire on the Eagles. But what you were saying is correct, that, this contract is not as bad as it looks. And so I think this could work out for the Eagles if as long as Wentz stays healthy. It's a big if, but if he stays healthy, I mean, the Eagles are going to greatly benefit from this for multiple reasons. So, and obviously, like what else are the Eagles going to do? Are they going to let Wentz walk after letting Nick Foles go? So, it's kind of like they didn't really have a choice. So I think a B plus, A minus type of grade is correct.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I also say, I think this I think there's a lot of teams in a similar boat, and you don't know what to do. And so the CBA is coming up, and I think what we'll begin to see, I know I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but I would not be surprised if the next CBA, you have one of two things happen. Either the salary cap skyrockets, and therefore a $30 million a year for a quarterback is sort of irrelevant. Like, who cares? It's such a small percentage, it doesn't matter. I think that's plausible. Or you see some serious negotiation where there's some element of control over individual players' percentage, or some element of, like, in the NBA, they have kind of what they call the Michael Jordan rule, where you could have one player that's sort of an exception, and they work things out maybe for the quarterback position, where the quarterback position doesn't count against salary cap, or it has an individual salary cap position where it's like you can spend $50 million a year on your quarterback, and then you can spend X number of dollars on the rest of the team. I would be really surprised if in the next 5 years we're not looking back and there's some significant structure that makes these quarterback contracts not look nearly as bad. I would project that, or some structure that limits the ability or limits what you can pay a quarterback.
They really need to do something like this because these teams are backed into a corner where they can't really do anything. I mean, you saw the Redskins were, I think, the lone exception where they let a good quarterback, not obviously not great, but a good quarterback go, and Kirk Cousins. But the other teams, you know, the Lions with Matthew Stafford, the Seahawks with Russell Wilson, the Falcons with Matt Ryan, et cetera. These teams have paid these quarterbacks tons of money, and they haven't been able to build good rosters around these quarterbacks unless they drafted extremely well. And for the most part, these teams haven't been able to do that. And so you see teams like the Lions were just their depth was decimated. The Falcons for a while, their depth was decimated. Same thing with the Seahawks. Like Russell Wilson is an MVP candidate, but he has nothing around him at all. Like that roster outside of Wilson is just terrible. So I think you're right. I think the CBA needs, or the new CBA needs to have some sort of some sort of transition where the quarterback is not counted against the cap, or the cap increases by a lot. But if the cap increases by a lot, these players are going to get even more money. So that's the risk as well. So I think the point you made about quarterbacks counting differently against the cap, I think that's smart. I think something that needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's ultimately going to be the ideal way to go.
Yeah, I agree. Next signing, Vikings re-signed tight end Kyle Rudolph, 4 years, $36 million. I was shocked by this. When the Vikings drafted Irv Smith Jr. in the second round, I figured they were just going to let Rudolph go, or that's what the rumors were. They were going to trade Rudolph, but apparently not. They re-signed him for $9 million a year. So what do you think about this?
I think it's an F, maybe a D minus, because I don't understand it, right? You spend some draft capital on a rookie tight end, and Kyle Rudolph has had a nice career. He's overachieved. He's played above his talent level, and he's kind of like a tough man kind of guy. Like, a lot of people love him. He's kind of a fan favorite here in Minnesota, in a lot of ways. So I can appreciate that. He's a hard worker. He's a leader in the locker room. He's really well liked. Yeah, that's all great. That's well and good, but he's mediocre at best. On his best day, he's kind of subpar at this point, talent-wise and ability-wise. How much money are you going to spend on a mediocre or barely mediocre subpar tight end? No matter how much of a nice guy he is, this is a gross overpay, and it kind of locks you into utilizing him and not really maybe being able to give opportunity to develop the younger tight end. Now, maybe there's a possibility for more, the 12 personnel, right? The more tight end, double tight end, all that. But it just seems like a lot of money for a guy that's not going to produce a whole lot, particularly on the heels of just having spent a relatively high draft pick on a tight end. It seems really high to me.
Yeah, I gave this a D, and I think I'm a little too high on it based on what you just said. This makes no sense. I mean, Kyle Rudolph is a decent player. He's fine. To give him $9 million a year, a player at a low impact position like him, especially when he drafted another player to replace him with a relatively early draft pick, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like you were saying, they could run 2 tight end sets and whatnot. That's fine, but you could find someone comparable to Rudolph for half the price, maybe even a third of the price right now. And he's going to turn 30 in November. He's a declining player. So this is also paying on pass production, where the pass production wasn't even that great. I get that he's great in the locker room and stuff like that, but you don't spend $9 million a year on someone like that. You spend the $9 million a year on a better offensive lineman to protect Kirk Cousins. So I think this is just a terrible move. I don't get it. I know I read on Twitter that the Viking fans were loving it, but I don't get it. It seems pretty terrible.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It just doesn't. At the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense. So, I'm a Minnesota resident, and I hear a lot about it. Kyle Rudolph is loved here, like legit. The fans think he's like amazing, and I get it. It just doesn't make sense financially.
Yeah, if they gave him like 5 million a year, like I would have thought that would have been a little too much. But it at least would have made more sense. But 9 million a year after you spent an early draft pick on a tight end just seems foolish. Next signings, the Saints re-signed defensive end Cameron Jordan, 3 years, 52.5 million with 42 million guaranteed. What do you think about this?
I don't think this is as bad as the Rudolph deal because number one, you got a better player and it's a little bit closer to what the premier defensive ends are making. And I think with the Saints, you can make the argument that, hey, like you've got 1 or 2 more years maybe with Drew Brees. Like I don't, that's the expectation. Like, hey, maybe this could be Drew Brees' last elite season, and so you need to do whatever you can to just keep as much good talent on the team so that you can try to win a Super Bowl one more time with Brees. Like, so I think it's not nearly as bad. So I don't think it's a D or F category like with the Kyle Rudolph deal. But it's not dramatically better. Like maybe it's like a C plus. Jordan's a good player. He's he's not the player he was. What was the year he had the great? Was it 2016 or 20 whatever, 27 whatever? There was one year a couple years ago where he had like this kind of the breakout or the double digit sacks. I don't remember exactly, but he's not that player. He's good, not great. This is just a huge amount of money. 52 million over 3 years. I mean, it's or whatever it is, 50 plus million. Wow, that's a lot of change to pay a good, not great player, but I understand why they're doing it. So in my mind, it's not nearly as bad as the Rudolph deal.
Okay, well, this is the first one we disagree on. I think Cameron Jordan still can be considered an elite player. He had 12 sacks last year. He was fantastic against the run. Age is a concern, though. I think that's the only hang up I have with the signing is that he turns 30 in July. So this could be another case of a team paying on pass production. But I think you could make the case that Cameron Jordan is still the best player on the Saints defense. Maybe it's Marshawn Lattimore, but I think Jordan is, if it's not Lattimore, I think it's definitely Jordan, especially with Sheldon Rankins being injured, not being able to play in 2019. And what you said is correct, that Drew Brees, this could be his final season, final great season. Maybe he has, I think he might have 2 more. I think that could be the case, but so I think, when you're going all in, and we saw the Saints trade a first round pick for another defensive end, Marcus Davenport. It's the Saints. They know that the window is closing. It might already be closed for all we know. Like Brees is 40 now. He could take a step back, but they have to go all in. That's what they have to do, and they have to make sure that they get Cameron Jordan. I think Cameron Jordan can still play extremely well for another year or two. So I like this move. I think it's a B plus worthy. Maybe you can talk me into going to a B because of his age, but I'm still a fan of Cameron Jordan. I still think he's a fantastic player.
Well, yeah, I guess that's where my thought, feeling like he wasn't as productive this past year. You're right. He was better against the run. And I just didn't feel like he was nearly as good at in the pass rush. And I guess that's where I was giving him a significant knock and thinking it's a significant overpay. But if you're right, if he gives them great production and if they win a Super Bowl, no one will care, right? This will matter. It would have been worth it because they won a Super Bowl, and that's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, that's true. All right, the final contract we're going to talk about, and I imagine that we're both going to be pessimistic about this one. The Chiefs re-signed kicker Harrison Butker, 4 years, 20 million. So is this an F or a D or what?
This is an F, because I don't understand why you're signing a kicker to a big money. I don't think this needs any analysis. It's a freaking kicker. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a really great reason to pay big money to a like he's just a kicker. Like he's not. Is he special kicker? Is he doing anything like this really phenomenally better than everyone else? I thought this was pretty odd. Maybe the Chiefs can get away with this because Mahomes is going to be on a rookie deal for a little while longer, and you can kind of afford to throw away money. Maybe that's the thought process there. I don't know.
Yeah, so Harrison Butker, he's been one of the better kickers. So let's start out on a positive note. He's been one of the better kickers in the NFL in the past couple of years. 62 of 69 in the past 2 years. That's great. 6 of 9 from 50 plus. That's awesome. He did miss 4 extra points in 2018, but he attempted 69 of them. So it's a high number. But it's like you said, it's still a kicker. It's not a proven elite kicker like Adam Vinatieri in his prime. He's going to make the clutch kicks, in the snow, like you could argue that he's worth this sort of money. Or if there is a kicker who comes along and he has like a bionic leg and he can drill 80-yard field goals, yeah, go ahead, pay him $5 million a year. But Harrison Butker, like he's only had 2 years of production, and I worry that he gets this money and then he starts missing some field goals. Maybe he's not as industrious this offseason because of the newfound cash, and so he's not practicing as hard, and then he misses a couple field goals, and then it starts getting into his head, and then he becomes the latest kicker who just fails. And like it's kind of like it's a circle of life with kickers, where like one comes out of nowhere and is awesome, and then he gets paid, and then he sucks, and then he gets cut, and then he signs on with another team and he starts kicking well again. It's like, oh wow, I remember this guy. And he starts kicking well again, then the new team gives him a lot of money, and then he sucks again. It's so I feel like you could find these guys anywhere. Just find them on the street or whatever. Just take one in undrafted free agency. I would never pay a kicker this much money unless, of course, it's like a Vinatieri type of guy. And unless the Chiefs are supremely confident that Butker can make a field goal in the snow to send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl next year, I don't know. I think this is bad. I don't know why I gave this a C- on the site. I guess I must have been drunk at the time. I don't know. I don't know why it's so high. It's definitely an F or D-. It's so bad. I can't imagine. I can't believe the Chiefs gave him this much money. Like you said, they have money to spend because of Mahomes' contract, but it's still foolish to pay a kicker this much.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about that, I guess.
Yeah, I think I spoke too long about it. Before we get to the fantasy stuff, reminder that you can go to DraftKings.com, enter in promo code Walter Football. That's one word, Walter Football. Obviously, the football season's not going on now, but you can play fantasy baseball. That's what I'm doing right now. I know I mentioned before that I've been in retirement from fantasy baseball, but I've come out of retirement to lose money in fantasy baseball. So you can lose money along with me at DraftKings with promo code Walter Football. And I'm going to share a quick lineup with you I have for tonight. The pitchers are Rodriguez from the Red Sox and Carson Charles Sabathia from the Yankees. Catcher Grandal from the Brewers. First baseman Aguilar from the Brewers. Second baseman Moustakas from the Brewers. Do you sense a trend here?
I like it.
Third baseman Ramirez from the Indians. I almost said strong safety, but it's shortstop Baez from the Cubs. Outfielder Yelich from the Brewers. Outfielder Braun from the Brewers. And outfielder Biggio from the Blue Jays. So basically, if you're not familiar with fantasy baseball, you tend to want to stack players together because all the players correlate with each other. If someone gets on base and then someone hits him in with a home run, you get the run, you get the previous hit. Obviously, you get the home run points. And so all these players correlate together. So you want to stack players together. So that's what you should do. So yeah, that's you can go, like I said before, you can go to DraftKings.com, enter in promo code Walter Football for a bonus with your first deposit. So let's talk about fantasy football. So you came up with this topic about talking about the top 5 fantasy football stories heading into 2019 that we're looking for. Do you want to offer like an introduction? And I know you have some honorable mentions that you might want to mention too.
So yeah, I pretty much just thought to myself, as I'm going into the summer and thinking about fantasy football, what are the biggest things I'm looking for? What are sort of the things that are on my mind? What's making me nervous, concerned, those sorts of things. So I did have some honorable mention, but what I basically did was I basically just kind of merged them all in the top 5. So basically I'm cheating. I really have a top 9, but you'll see as we go through them, they'll match. They'll be like, it'll make sense. Like, okay, that could have been 2, but you merged it into 1. So I'll go with that.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I came up with 5 of my own. I did sort of the same thing that you did. I had like 7, and I was able to combine like 3 of them into 1. So that is my number 4 story. So do you want to lead off here with your number 5?
Yep, I'll lead off here. Number 5 storyline, I think that a lot of fantasy owners will be thinking about is who's going to now be at the top of the tight end list. What do we do with the tight end position as a whole? Now that Gronk is gone, and over the last 3 seasons, we've seen a pretty significant, I think maybe revolution is too strong of a word, but I think we've seen a significant shift as to how tight ends are being utilized across the NFL. And pretty much from the late 90s up until about 2015, it was either you get the top tight end or you just wait to the very end. It doesn't matter because the point difference between the top, the 3 to 4 spot and like the 16th spot were so negligible. It wasn't worth. So remember last year in one of our leagues, the league that you and I are together, and I think I drafted a tight end it was a 16 round draft. I drafted OJ Howard in round 15, and I actually cut him before he got good. And so I think that's going to be a thing to think about. And so who is that top guy? Are any of the top guys worth it? Is Zach Ertz going to be that guy? He had 116 catches last year. I can't imagine that's going to happen again. Is Hunter Henry coming back off of ACL? Is he potentially going to be a dominant type of player? Is this the year where Ingram or Njoku take a step forward? You may hear Njoku's name again later in my list related to another headline. It's sort of like what do we do with the tight end position? And now that Gronk is gone, should we just pretty much abandon the idea of drafting a tight end at the tops? And is it sort of gone with the, remember when in some leagues, kickers still get drafted higher, but I could see the point where it's like quarterbacks are getting drafted so late. Do tight ends get pushed even further down now? Is that where the Sharks go? Or is there really a value in identifying someone in the middle rounds? I think that's a pretty significant storyline that if you get it right, I think could really impact your league in 2019.
Well, it has to be Travis Kelce is number one, right? Like it's I think with Tyreek Hill's issues, he might not play. Like Kelce could have an even greater year, but it really depends on how early he goes. Like I don't think I would draft Kelce in the first round or anything. I'm actually in an experts league. Quote unquote experts league. I say that I don't know if I'm an expert in fantasy, but Travis Kelce is he went 4th overall in the second round in our league, and I think that's okay. I wasn't
man. Second round.
Yeah, I had the 7th pick in the second round, and I was thinking I don't know, Kelce was on my radar there. I don't know if I would have taken him there. But he at least was in the list of names I was considering. I don't think I would have drafted him based on who landed there. I actually drafted Adam Thielen. It's a 3 receiver PPR league, and so I took Thielen in the second round. I remember. So we've been in fantasy leagues for since 2000, I think, and I remember you having a Tony Gonzalez rule where if you get Gonzalez, great, early. But if you don't get Gonzalez, just wait until the late rounds to take a tight end. And that's what I would do. If Kelce's there in the 3rd round, great. Take him. Maybe Ertz in the 4th. Other than that, I would just wait on tight ends. In this league, I think I waited till the 12th round to get a tight end, or maybe in the 13th round. It's just not worth it. These guys are, after the first couple, they're just all the same. So I would just wait.
I just traded George Kittle, by the way, in a keeper auction league I'm in because I had Hunter Henry on IR all last year. So I just traded George Kittle for some auction cash. And so I've got Henry's my tight end, and I'll have a couple extra bucks. I think more and more this year I'm less likely to even do Kelce in the 3rd or Ertz in the 4th. To me, it's more like maybe Kelce in the 4th, depending on the structure, maybe Ertz in the 6th. So all likelihood is I'm not getting any of those guys.
Yeah, same here. Specifically, I took Austin Hooper in the 12th round. I think he's okay. And then in the 14th round, I took Tyler Eifert because if Eifert stays healthy, he's great, and but he'll probably be injured, and I'll cut him after week 3. My number 5 story is concerns the Buccaneers and Jameis Winston, and this is going to be his final chance. There was speculation that Winston could have been cut this offseason, but the Buccaneers decided to give him one more chance. They brought in Bruce Arians to be the new head coach. I'm excited to see what Arians does with Jameis Winston because Winston has so much potential. He was obviously the number 1 pick from the draft a few years ago, but he just hasn't lived up to it. He's been a disappointment. He was benched last year for Ryan Fitzpatrick at some point, but if Winston develops under Arians, and Arians has had a great track record with quarterbacks, the Buccaneers have so much firepower. They have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, their 2 tight ends, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. So if Winston becomes the Pro Bowl quarterback he was supposed to be, all these guys could just go off and they could be just dominant fantasy players. And I know like there's a lot of hype surrounding Chris Godwin already. Like, can you imagine if Winston has a great year? The sort of season Chris Godwin could have, like Godwin could be a household name heading into next offseason. Like we could be talking about him as like a potential second or a third round pick in fantasy drafts. Like that's the sort of potential that the Buccaneers have on offense. We just need to see Winston develop and not make dumb mistakes in the red zone, which he's been prone to do throughout his career. But for once, he actually has a good coach coaching him offensively. So I think I'm really excited to see what the Buccaneers do.
Yeah, and don't forget they have that one Ronald Jones. Remember him?
I like, you know what? I mean, we talked about that last offseason and we argued about that, but I actually like Ronald Jones this offseason.
I'm nauseous now every time I think about him.
I know. I hated Jones last year, but I like Jones now. I mean, he's reportedly in shape. He was kind of a knucklehead last year. I think he's kind of gotten the message where if he doesn't produce this year, he's going to be gone. And I think he knows this is his last chance. And he's not being drafted early. He's being drafted later than he was last year. And so I'm willing to take a chance on him. I think he could be a good player. I think I actually drafted him in our experts league.
Yeah, I owned Ronald Jones in a lot of leagues. So I think everything you said about Winston is 100% accurate. This is really the first time he's going to have a coach that I think has the mindset to and has a track record to have utilized quarterbacks of his skill set. So yeah, if it doesn't work with Arians this year, I would imagine that spells the demise of Mr. Winston in Tampa. I'm less confident than I am confident. I'm not super confident that it's going to turn out great. I probably will not own a lot of shares of those Buccaneer players. And if I miss out and I'm wrong, I won't feel bad about it because I don't feel super confident. I could be wrong. For Winston's sake and his sake, for his career, I hope I'm wrong. But he doesn't strike me as someone who's put the work in and that I should put a lot of bank in.
Yeah, I love Arians. I don't love Winston. And that's what it comes down to. I'm like 50-50 on it. I could see being great. I could see him being terrible. And so we'll see. By the way, I did not get Ronald Jones. I remember like almost getting him. Like he almost got to my pick in the 8th round and I was going to take him there, but he did not get to me. He got taken at 802. Anyway, so what is your number 4 story?
My number 4 story has got to be Antonio Brown to the Oakland Raiders and what that's going to do. John Gruden, came out of retirement, out of the booth. There are all sorts of thoughts on him. There's a website, with the countdown for when he's going to get fired. I think this. I mean, it feels to me like they don't have a plan in Oakland. Like they trade away Amari Cooper, they're trading away Khalil Mack. They're kind of like just making random roster moves, and then it's like, oh, we got a chance to get Brown. Let's do it. Like there doesn't seem to be any systematic, strategic direction. Like, do you have a trajectory that you've set for, or are you kind of just like figuring out as you go? And that's what it feels like. However, Carr's not a phenomenal quarterback, but he's proven that he's good enough. He's good enough to make your team playoff contenders. I think that's where, like, if he's healthy and all things are going right, your team could be a real playoff contender. I think he's probably more talented than Kirk Cousins. Actually, I know people disagree with me. I mean, or they're comparable. In my mind, they're in the same category. And so I think if Derek Carr is healthy and this Antonio Brown experiment works, this offense could end up being explosive because we've seen Antonio Brown. Like we know what this man can do on the field, and we know how much he detracts or he demands attention from the defense. And we've seen how much it opens up things for other players. And they don't have a ton of talent on offense, but they've got enough that if those guys are running open, they're going to put up numbers. And I have this suspicion that their offense is going to be more explosive than people realize. Or what could happen is this is a total disaster that, that Antonio Brown goes total diva and just absolutely blows up, and Carr can't handle it. And Gruden is Mr. Chucky, demanding players to be loyal, a la like it's 1971 still. Like I just think he still has like a little bit of an old school mentality on how players should behave, and that's just not today's NFL. And I think this could go really bad, really fast. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting storyline that will impact a lot of fantasy teams in 2019.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about this one at all. I think Antonio Brown has never been on a terrible team, right? He's either been on a great team, a good team, or maybe even an average team. He's never been on a team like this. And the Raiders, they're going to be better than they were last year. But that might not be reflected in the record. They had an easy schedule last year. This year they don't play after like, was it September 15th? They don't play again at home until November 2nd. Like their schedule is just brutal, and they play so many tough teams. The division is very difficult. I don't know. I think the Raiders will have a big week 1 against the Broncos. It'll be the 10-10 start on Monday Night Football. The crowd's going to be going nuts. All the Raider fans will be drunk. This is their final season. They're 2-point favorites, but it feels like they're underdogs because everyone's betting Denver right now. I can see the Raiders just like whitewashing the Broncos and Antonio Brown having a huge game. And then it just goes downhill from there. Like the Raiders just collapse and don't win another game until November. I could see something like that happening. And so I worry about the Raiders. I think this might be Derek Carr's last year because if the Raiders struggle, they're probably going to go after Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert or one of the other quarterbacks from the 2020 draft class, which is looking great. So I'm not excited about. Well, I'm not optimistic about it, like I said, but I'm excited to see what happens because either way it'll be fun, right? It'll either be explosive offense or it'll just be a complete train wreck, and it'll be entertaining.
Entertaining either way.
Right, exactly. My number 4 story is the 3 I combined. So I was just looking at young quarterbacks. I want to see if these young quarterbacks emerge and become, take the next step and become stars. And if they do become stars, then that means all the players around them will benefit from that and will become good fantasy players as well. So the 4 I have written down is Mitchell Trubisky, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, and Lamar Jackson. And going through these quickly. So Trubisky, the Bears defense is going to be worse this year than it was last year because they lost Vic Fangio, the coordinator. They lost Bryce Callahan, their great slot corner. And so Trubisky's going to have to do more. He threw off his back foot way too many times last year. So if he takes the next step, and he has the talent to do so, and I like Matt Nagy, like Allen Robinson could like have another great year, stuff like that. Tariq Cohen could have a solid season. So I want to see Trubisky taking the next step. Then you have Josh Allen. The Bills brought in some young receivers to help him. It's his second year. He has immense talent. He can throw the ball 70, 80 yards. This guy's awesome, talent-wise, but we'll see if he can do it mentally. That's the only question. Sam Darnold, I think both you and I are very optimistic about him, but we actually have to see him do it on a long-term basis. And, yeah, he has Robbie Anderson. Like, I know Temple's own Robbie Anderson, as you say.
That's right.
Anderson could have like 1,200 yards or 1,300 yards if Sam Darnold becomes an elite quarterback, and so we'll see what happens there. And then Lamar Jackson, I think I'm pessimistic about him because I don't trust the coaches in Baltimore. Marty Morningwig, I mean, he coached the Eagles. Do you think Marty Morningwig can develop Lamar Jackson, or do you think it has to be someone else?
It's a greid question. At best it's 50-50. It's probably more like I give it a 40% chance.
Right,
it's not good, right?
Right. When Lamar Jackson was drafted, I said this guy has immense upside, but if he has great coaching, he's going to turn out well. If he has bad coaching, he's going to be a bust in the NFL. That is like ceiling is super high, his floor is very low. And I think we saw his floor in that playoff game against the Chargers. And I think there's going to be more of that coming now that teams have tape on him, and he's going to play better teams. Every team in that division has improved. So I think I'm worried about Lamar Jackson this year, but he like Josh Allen, he has immense talent and can take the next step. And if he does, we're going to see like Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, emerge as a good rookie, maybe offensive rookie of the year. So we'll see. That's my number 4 story. What's your number 3?
My number 3, and I ended up combining these. Oh, by the way, my honorable mention number 6 would have been the combining of rookie quarterbacks. And of the ones you mentioned, the only one I'm confident in is Sam Darnold. I have very little confidence in any of those. And I'm really down on Trubisky. He's not a good quarterback. So the others, Jackson, and who was the other one you mentioned?
Josh Allen.
I'm 50-50 on either one of those. Darnold, I'm very high on. I think he's going to take the next step forward. My number 3 is also a combining of quarterbacks, but this is the health of quarterbacks. I think this is huge. originally I had it separate as Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, and Jimmy Garoppolo. But I guess I can put them all together. The health of these three quarterbacks, I think, will dramatically shape the entire trajectory of the NFC in 2019. If all three of these guys are healthy, all three of those teams are going to be good and competitive, and the NFC is going to be a dogfight, and you're going to have multiple teams in that fight. If these three quarterbacks are not healthy, it's going to be like Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, like if they can be serious, and pretty much like the NFC South Division champion. Like I guess the Rams are. I guess I shouldn't let the Rams out. I'm down on the Rams for various reasons, but I just don't think they can replicate it. I think they've lost a couple players, and I think everything went right for them last year, and they got every break needed. I just don't think they're as good. I don't think Goff is as good as people think. So I think they could, like, if the Seahawks are good and the Niners are good, I don't think the Rams are going to win that division. But if all three of these guys, if Jimmy Garoppolo is hurt, then if he can't come back and rebound after injury, we've seen Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was an Iron Man, was awesome early in his career, and then just seems like I think 3 times in the last few years he's ended the year on IR. He seems to miss a lot of games. He seems to get banged up. And then obviously Carson Wentz, my hometown team, my squad. He's played 7 years of serious football, 4 in college and 3 in the NFL. And of those 7, he has finished 4 of the years with an injury and not been able to finish the season. So he's only been able to finish in his 7 years of major football, if you consider North Dakota State major, but like it's 4 years of college and 3 years in the NFL. He's only finished the season 3 times out of 7. That's not a good track record. That's got to make you nervous if you're a fan of Wentz or the Eagles, or if you just want quarterbacks to be healthy. So I think this is a major situation that we can't control. Like at the end of the day, but ultimately, if Wentz stays healthy, I think the Eagles are potentially the number 1, number 2 offense in the NFL. Maybe depending on what happens with the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill. But I think the Eagles are a top 3 offense, if not better, if Wentz is healthy this year. Aaron Rodgers, if he's healthy, like he's arguably one of the best quarterbacks. Some would say the best quarterback ever when he's fully healthy, right? Like what we've seen him do on the field is unbelievable. And that team is good enough to be a serious playoff contender. And if he's healthy and in his game, they're a Super Bowl contender. Like he's that good. We've seen that. And Jimmy Garoppolo, we've seen him be good as well. Like, I think he's legit. He's got probably the fastest release of almost any other quarterback in the NFL, or one of the fastest. They've added some talent. If he's healthy, if he bounces back, I think they're the favorite to win the division, to win the NFC West above the Rams. And so I think that's a significant storyline going into 2019, the health of those 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, you know why I like your number 3 a lot is because that's my number 3. But I was specifically focused on Aaron Rodgers, and I'll one up your statement where you said the Packers are a Super Bowl contender with a healthy Rodgers. If you were to tell me right now that Aaron Rodgers would not get injured in the slightest next year, I would make the Packers my Super Bowl favorites. I'd mark them down as the Super Bowl winners on the website in our season previews, and I'd bet very heavily on them to win the Super Bowl when I go to Vegas in July. I think they have so much talent. They added to their defense. They added, their young receivers are coming up, and it's all about Rodgers. We have to see if he can stay healthy, because he hasn't been able to do that, and I think his health is I think is the biggest factor heading into 2019 overall, like not just from fantasy, but if you look at fantasy, it's also huge, because not only is Rodgers, a great fantasy quarterback when healthy, but if he's healthy, his young receivers are going to step up. Like I think Devontae Adams is going to be great in fantasy no matter what. But then the other guys like Geronimo Allison, he could have a huge year if Rodgers stays healthy. Same thing with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's been good in the offseason. I know like the offseason is a time for puff pieces and stuff like that from the media, but Rodgers specifically pointed out Valdez-Scantling as someone who's been great this offseason. So I would trust Rodgers more so than team reporters. Or most team reporters. So I'm looking forward to Scantling, Valdez-Scantling, if Rodgers stays healthy. And then you have Aaron Jones in the backfield. If Rodgers is healthy, teams can't focus on Jones. And if that offense is humming along, Jones could have like 15 touchdowns or 16 touchdowns, something like that. Like he could be the number one fantasy running back this year. Like wouldn't surprise me, especially considering the health of some of the other running backs or suspension, et cetera. So yeah, that's what I wanted to focus on was Rodgers' health heading into 2019. Like I said, that is the biggest factor for me this season.
Yeah, can you imagine if Wentz and Rodgers are healthy? I mean, I think those are the two best teams in the NFC. I think the Eagles overall are better, top to bottom, more talented. I think they got better playmakers on the defensive side of the football with Cox and Jenkins and those kind of guys. Yeah, I could foresee it if those guys are healthy. An NFC conference title game, NFC championship game in Philly, Lincoln Financial Field. Rodgers, Wentz. I think that'd be a hell of a game. And I think that's if these guys are healthy, that's the trajectory those two squads are on. But if those guys are injured, man, if Rodgers is injured, that completely changes the makeup of the NFC North, right? The Bears then have kind of an easy, or maybe the Vikings, those teams are having an easy path to the division title with 10 wins. And now they're hosting a playoff game, even though they probably aren't quite the caliber of a team that deserve it. And I think that completely changes the makeup of the entire NFC road to the Super Bowl.
I agree. And yeah, Packers, Eagles, if Rodgers and Wentz are healthy, just put that in pen for the NFC Championship game because those two teams are the best teams in the conference. But unfortunately, I think at least one of them will be injured. So I guess we'll see what happens. So what is your number 2 story heading into 2019?
Number 2, this is Le'Veon Bell with the New York Jets. I think this is a dramatic I think this is a significant storyline from 2 perspectives, both from just a real NFL perspective and from a fantasy perspective, because I'm not sure where to draft Lev Bell. We've seen what Lev Bell can do on the football field. We've seen how talented he is. We know that he's a great player. And we've also seen the Pittsburgh Steelers still be productive without him. And so it's hard to fully gauge what he's worth and how's that going to translate in the Jets offense. So it's hard to if someone was trying to make a case that Lev Bell should be the number 1 overall pick in fantasy, listen, I'm not going to take him there, but I love Lev Bell as much as anyone. I would struggle to make that argument, but if someone's like, hey, he's really not worth anything more than a 2nd round pick. If there's a handful of the elite running backs and then there's a couple of those elite receivers. If someone were to tell me I'm going to take the other handful of elite receivers ahead of Lev Bell, I wouldn't argue against that either. I think you can make a case that he should be drafted anywhere from 1 to 20, which is a pretty significant range for an elite running back. I think he's on the top half of that. But gosh, if someone's like, nah, I'd rather just take one of the elite receivers and not roll the dice with Lev Bell. I get it. He's had an injury history, and we don't know what a year off is going to make, right? We have no idea. What does a year off do to a running back? Does it just mean he's fresher and stronger? Or does that mean he comes out rusty for several weeks? I feel like anyone who says they know for sure, I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't buy it. So it feels hard to know for sure what to expect. But if he's great, and if Sam Darnold takes a step forward that I think he's going to take, with the additions this team has made, legitimately, maybe this is the year the Jets take a significant step forward and seriously, finally, someone is contending with the Patriots for the AFC East title. And maybe this is coming down to the final few weeks. And then maybe the Jets can steal the division. I know that sounds crazy to some, but I think Lev Bell's storyline is significant, both from a fantasy perspective. Like someone drafts him in the 2nd round and he's awesome. You've put yourself way ahead of the rest of your league. And if he's awesome, it helps the Jets significantly. And then vice versa. If he's completely rusty and you've drafted him in the 2nd round or the 1st round, now you've completely screwed your team over. And the Jets spent a bunch of money on a guy who's not being as productive as they had hoped. And maybe that becomes a problem or a detriment to them. So I think either way, this is a pretty significant storyline to follow this year.
Yeah, I actually love Bell this year, and you're right. Like you can't know for sure, but I think that the fact that he didn't get the amount of money he was asking for from the Steelers, actually got less from the Jets than he would have gotten from the Steelers, which caused them to sit out a year. It's kind of a little embarrassing there, but I think that he's going to be motivated. I think he wants to prove the Steelers wrong, and I believe that the Jets do play the Steelers this year. So I think he's going to be very motivated. I think Bell's going to have a great year. We saw the Jets upgrade their offensive line with Kalichi Osemele. And so I think I like Bell a lot. In that experts league I mentioned earlier, I actually drafted Bell number 8 overall. Again, it's a PPR league, so I'm going to get his receptions. So I don't know if he would have been 8th overall in a standard. I'd have to check my rankings, but in a PPR, 8th overall for Le'Veon Bell. I actually love that this year. I have a feeling I'm going to have Le'Veon Bell in several leagues of mine. Which is weird because I have a bad history with Le'Veon Bell. Leading up to the 2013 draft. It's a story I'm going to be writing about in my book, which is hopefully going to come out before the beginning of the season. So I don't know what the title is, but it's mostly written, and there's a chapter about Le'Veon Bell and my situation with him. So
I look forward to reading it.
It's a nice teaser there. I like that number 2. It wasn't on my list, but it easily could have been. My number 2 is Tyreek Hill situation. We don't like. No one knows what's going to happen, right? We heard that horrible recording. It was audio, but for some reason, the police aren't pursuing it, or they're not pursuing the charges. I don't know why. They have the audio recording. I don't know if they think it's doctored or what, but it sounded horrible. But
they just announced this week. If anyone doesn't know, they just announced they're basically not pursuing charges against Tyreek Hill at all.
Right. So, if Tyreek Hill's not going to prison or anything, that doesn't mean he's not going to be suspended. So right. I wonder how long he's going to be suspended. Is it going to be half a year? Is it going to be the whole year? Is it only going to be 2 games like Goodell once tried to do with Ray Rice? We don't know. I think that's a huge storyline because Tyreek Hill changes the whole dynamics of the AFC West and maybe even the entire AFC. If Tyreek Hill is healthy, he's a legitimate top 20 fantasy pick. He makes the Chiefs one of the best teams in the AFC. But if he's not healthy, then who's going to step up outside of Travis Kelce? Is it going to be the rookie Mecole Hardman? Is it going to be Sammy Watkins? Is it going to be someone else that we don't really know of right now? Is not on our radar? I think that's enormous, and I'm curious to see how long of a suspension Tyreek Hill is going to get. I imagine if I were to make a prediction, I think he's going to get 8 games. But any number of games wouldn't surprise me. What do you think? How long do you think he's going to be suspended?
Yeah, I mean, if Chubb got, not Chubb,
Kareem Hunt.
I was thinking Nick Chubb for the Browns, Kareem Hunt's teammate. If I'm thinking if Kareem Hunt is going to be out half the season, that seems like a standard or sort of a precedent that the NFL has set. Now Hunt did miss, a chunk of the playoffs and regular season because he got cut, and so maybe that weighed in. Yeah. If they came down and said 8 games or 10 game suspension, that wouldn't surprise me. What would surprise me if he was gone the whole year. If Roger Goodell said you're out for an entire season, I think that would surprise me based on the current precedents we've seen. 10 games would be significant, right? I mean, 10 games would be what Zeke got originally was 6, and did it get listed? Was it 4 for Zeke or 6? I can't remember. So I think it was originally 6, and then they reduced it to 4. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, basically, I think this scenario feels ugly, and it came out in the off season, so there's nothing mitigating. Like, it's not like, well, you missed some games last year, so you kind of get almost getting credit for the games you missed last year, so to speak. Like that, it sort of felt like. So yeah, 10 games would feel like the number that I'm expecting. But if Goodell says you're out for the whole year, that wouldn't shock me either. It also wouldn't shock me if Goodell was like 4. I mean, if he gave like a small number, just based on what we've seen from Goodell's inconsistencies with this. So I think it's a major storyline. You're right, and the fact that it didn't make that my top 5 is probably odd.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of great stories that we talk about, but so my question to you is, if it's announced that Tyreek Hill is suspended for 10 games, where do you draft him?
Oh man, I mean, I'm obviously very late, but gosh, I'm going to want to guess where. I'm going to want to see what the ADP is, and try to get him around the head and stash him. Like, that would be my. In fact, if I'm in a keeper league, I am in 2 keeper leagues. I think one of the smart shark moves would be to try to trade for him now when there's still an unknown, because players are going to get injured, and Tyreek Hill is going to be good. And so even if you have your starting lineup through 10 weeks and people are getting banged up, can you imagine being able to throw Tyreek Hill in week 12 in your flex spot?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
and the Chiefs are battling for the division, that could be fun, right? I mean, I hate to sound like I'm benefiting from a really ugly real life situation. But from a fantasy owner perspective, you might be able to sort of exploit this.
Let me let's see. Not to put you in the spot, but where do you think he went in our experts league?
How many teams is in the expert league?
12.
12-team league, PPR,
3 receiver.
3 receiver. My guess is, I mean, he would have been a second round pick, right? Probably.
Yeah, I guess top 20 fantasy pick, I think.
Yeah. Maybe he went in the 9th round.
Oh, you're close. Eighth round, 11th pick. So almost there. Yeah, and I think that's about right. And I, by the way, for the record, I drafted Kareem Hunt in the 7th round. It might have been a little too early, but like what you said makes a lot of sense. Like you can plug one of these elite players into your lineup, and Kareem Hunt's going to catch the passes in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Once he comes back. So I think 7th, 8th might have been too early. I think I regret that a little bit. 8th round, I think, is where you want to target these guys because they'll probably go late 8th, 9th, somewhere around there. So that's my number 2. What's your number 1 story?
My number 1. Hey, by the way, if anyone watching on YouTube, I apologize. My screen goes in the fritz sometimes. So if you see, if it looks like my face is flashing, that's the reason why. I was
wondering. I was like, is there like aliens in your office? Like, what is that? Or your apartment?
Literally, my laptop screen just blinks sometimes randomly when I use it for long periods of time. So anyway, so you can see that. Anyway, so I apologize, but
it's not a good sign for your laptop. I think it's about to
die. I've gotten used to this, so I have to tell people whenever I'm Skyping or doing Google Hangout. Well, you mentioned Kareem Hunt, and I mentioned Chubb. So I mentioned Njoku earlier. My number 1 storyline this year is the Cleveland Browns offense. I think it's going to be a significant impact on fantasy because there's so many players tied to this, right? Kareem Hunt coming back midseason after suspension, Chubb, who's going to be a highly drafted running back. You've got this, new young quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Does he take a major step forward and become an elite quarterback the way we saw with Patrick Mahomes or Jared Goff last year or with Wentz the year before? Does he take that kind of step? Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr., right? This guy's been a top 5, top 6 draft pick in many fantasy drafts over the last several seasons. Does he produce that kind of stat line? Or is he really more like a 2nd or 3rd round value? Jarvis Landry, obviously in the mix. Njoku, who I think with that offense and his talent, if you told me, I think Njoku is going to be the number 1 tight end this year, I wouldn't fight you on it. Like, I don't think it's absurd to think that Njoku could get, 75 catches, and finish with like double-digit touchdowns. Like, I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility with the style of offense, with the other weapons opening things up, with Baker Mayfield's propensity to throw the ball in the middle of the field, and he can do it accurately. It would not surprise me if Njoku is a top 3 tight end this year. So I got a feeling I'm going to own a lot of picks. I'm going to own a lot of shares of Njoku. I'll be drafting him late with the hope that he, is a guy that turns around and produces great. I think I think a lot of people are going to be thinking what I'm thinking, that a lot of people are going to put a lot of stock in drafting Landry and Beckham and Chubb and Chubb and Hunt. I think there's a lot of guys doing that. But I think there's a real potential that it completely goes bust, right? Like where Mayfield just ends up completely sucking, totally being terrible, and ends up not being what we think it's going to be. I think there's a potential for this to be an absolute complete disaster where Beckham ends up being a turd in the locker room. The offense is completely defunct. Baker Mayfield takes a step backward, and they end up being 7-9 again, and everyone's fantasy teams are completely destroyed by it. Or they're completely explosive. They're the number 1 offense in football, and everyone who drafted their players is handsomely rewarded for it. I think this is a very volatile, but potentially extremely rewarding situation going into 2019.
Yeah, I would say they're probably the most hyped team in the NFL heading into 2019. They remind me of the Rams last year, and I thought the Rams would, disappoint. And, I guess from a point spread aspect, they did, because after week 4 against the Vikings, that Thursday night crazy game, they didn't even cover that spread. they barely covered the spread that year. So from a betting perspective, the Rams were a disappointment last year. Although they made the Super Bowl, albeit with some lucky circumstances. So I think that's some cause for optimism for Browns fans. I know that I know several Browns fans and friends with them. And they are cautiously optimistic. Like they know they have a very talented team, but they're worried that with all these expectations, and they haven't seen the Browns make the playoffs since 2002. This team has just been in turmoil for so long, and now they actually have great players on their team, and it's like they just don't know. They're just not sure if this team is going to live up to the expectations. So we'll see. I think that's a great number one story. I'm really interested to see what the Browns do this year. I probably should have included Baker Mayfield in the young quarterback segment I did earlier, although Mayfield looked mostly very good or even great sometimes last year. So that's why I didn't include him, because I don't think he needed – I don't think you need to say that Mayfield needs to take the next step, because I feel like he already did that as a rookie. I like the Browns. I think they make the playoffs next year, but I don't know if they win the division. I think the Steelers are still slightly better. And if you look at the Vegas odds, the Browns are 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, which is kind of nuts. And if you compare that to the Steelers are 23-1, which doesn't seem right? Like the Steelers have been so much more successful. I actually like the Steelers 23-1, but at any rate, my number one story is Todd Gurley's knee. Just like what's going to happen with Todd Gurley? Like I don't think anyone knows. Would it surprise you if Gurley is somehow healthier than expected and has a huge year? I don't surprise me at all.
Right.
On the other hand, it wouldn't surprise me if Gurley barely plays the entire year because they want to save him for the playoffs. And then you have Darrell Henderson taking over, or maybe another running back. Maybe they have more touches than Gurley. So what's going to happen? Like if Gurley didn't have those issues in the playoffs last year, and if he had no knee concerns right now, he would be the number one pick, bar none. I don't think I don't think anyone would even be considered otherwise.
Yeah, he easily.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the year he had last year before his injury, right now, people are debating between Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, maybe even someone else. But yeah, Gurley would be the bar none number one pick in fantasy drafts in every single format. But no one knows what to make of him. I've seen some rankings where he's 28th overall. I have him in the second round in our experts draft. Someone drafted him in the late first. It's just based on upside, obviously, but I don't know, where do you draft Todd Gurley? Let's say you have every position, every draft slot available to you in the draft. Where do you put him?
You're right. It's a great storyline. And again, that was, that easily worthy of the top spot there. I'm thinking I'm rolling the dice. I'm more likely to take him in the earlier parts of the first round than I think most people are.
Okay.
Because it could end up blowing up in your face, right? I mean, I am more likely to take the risk. I'm not taking him number one overall. I think I like Zeke in that spot in most formats. I think you can make a case for Kamara, but I think after that, if someone told me I'm taking Gurley third overall, okay, I'm not going to fight you there. I think anywhere from 3 to 20, which I kind of similar where Lev Bell is in that, and it's hard to know. I'm probably taking him earlier than most because I just love the talent so much. But I understand if someone says, now I don't want to roll the dice, I'm not taking him before the second. I completely understand that. That's valid as well.
Oh man, before the second, I have him as my 19th overall player in fantasy this year. I don't know. I don't want to deal with it. Maybe I'm just scorned from using Gurley every week in DraftKings in the playoffs and just not watching him not do anything. CJ Anderson was more productive. Not only that, the Rams lost their star guard Roger Saffold and their center John Sullivan. So the blocking won't be as great as it's been the past couple of years. So that's a slight concern for me as well. But the knee is just a huge factor. And we've heard stories where Maurice Jones-Drew spoke to Todd Gurley, and Maurice Jones-Drew came away saying that Gurley's not going to have as many carries this year as he's had in the past. And so Yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't blame anyone for drafting him in the first round, and like I said, in our experts league, he went in the first round, 10th overall, in fact. And so I have a feeling he's going to go there, like between 8th and 13th, 14th overall. He's probably going to go there in most drafts, unless there's some more news about it. But I'm not touching him until the late second round. I just can't do it. I'd rather be safer with someone, and I've always said that, like, you can't win your draft in the first 2 rounds, but you can lose your draft. You can lose your fantasy season in the first 2 rounds of the draft if you draft busts. And Gurley, I think, has the biggest draft bust potential of any first round pick. He has the highest ceiling, but the biggest draft bust potential. So that's my big concern.
Hard to argue. 19 feels low, but I get it. If someone's like, listen, I'm not touching him before the end of the second, there are just too many safe players on the board that I expect to be, really great. I totally get it. And I think him and Lev Bell are similar for different reasons. I think have similar question marks around them. There's this kind of elite tier of running backs, and there's an elite tier of receivers. And then you got to get that third tier of overall players. I think both Gurley and Bell, for a lot of people, are going to be in that sort of third grouping. And I would imagine there's some people that probably put them later, right? There's some people that would say, I don't want to deal with it. I'm not touching them to the third round because they just don't want to deal with the risk that he ends up, particularly maybe early in the year, maybe in the first 6 weeks, they want to just kind of like lighten the load. And then, just to make sure he's doing okay. Well, gosh, if he's not producing great for the first 6 weeks, you could be out of your playoff race by that point, right? I mean, you could, one or two things go wrong. So I get the perspective. I'm someone willing to take a little more of a risk. I drafted Lev Bell in multiple. I had him in 2 leagues last year, right? So I mean, I got 0 for. So wow. I'm the one that's going to take I'm a little more of a risk taker, generally speaking. And sometimes it pays off great, and I've won a lot of fantasy leagues because of it. And sometimes not so much. I've missed a lot of fantasy playoffs because of it. So I think it comes down to, as you said, just like, hey, I don't want to deal with it. I think it comes down to kind of what can you stomach? What's your preference as you approach drafting?
Yeah. By the way, I missed Saquon Barkley as one of the early fantasy running backs. I would put Barkley number one. But I think I take risks in fantasy drafts. I've drafted Le'Veon Bell. Remember that one year he was going to be suspended for 4 games. I drafted him in one of my leagues, and I ended up paying the price because I didn't have as strong of a team, and I think I started like 1-3, and that really hurt me. But I am willing to take risks, but I think this one is too great for my blood. Just the arthritic knee, it just sounds bad, for a running back. Like, he may never be the same player ever again, which is unfortunate. I've said this before, but one highly respected personnel man, heading into the draft where Gurley was taken, he thought Gurley was going to be the next Jim Brown. And like, his team didn't end up getting the Todd Gurley. They tried to trade up for him, but the Rams just wouldn't budge. And yeah, I mean, like, Gurley, the way he's been running the past couple of years, he's been tremendous. But man, that arthritic knee for running back just sounds like a death sentence for that player's career. And I wouldn't. Like I said, I wouldn't draft him in the first round. He's my number 13 running back, which seems wrong, but I just don't want to take the risk.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I get it.
Yeah. All right, that's it for our top 5 fantasy football storylines heading into 2019. Anything you want to add?
Oh no, that's it. I'm looking forward for fantasy. I'm in my mind. I have not done much fantasy baseball. You're the FanDuel fantasy baseball fanatic, or sorry, I'm not.
DraftKings.
DraftKings. Sorry, DraftKings. What's that FanDuel? What's that nonsense?
I have no idea what that website is.
I don't no idea. DraftKings. Sorry. Love the DraftKings. You're the DraftKings baseball man. And but I'm looking forward to fantasy football. It's just like I'm ready. The NBA Finals is over. It's football season. Let's just get it going.
I agree. Yeah. It's dog days of summer where there are no like real sports. Like, I mean, you like baseball. I suddenly like betting baseball, and it's fun. It is fun to make DraftKings lineups and to lose money. And like, when it says you're currently winning $0 at the end of the night, like, you just get a warm, tingly sensation. But fantasy football is awesome. I love it. we've been playing together for almost 20 years now, which seems crazy. And I'm looking forward to our league and lots more fantasy discussions on our podcast. And I will be publishing the Experts Fantasy Mock Draft on the website once it's complete. We're currently in the 17th round of 18 rounds. I'm on the clock next, and I've been on the clock next for like 6 hours. So I don't know when this guy's gonna make this pick, but I have my picks ready to go. By the way, I'm not drafting a kicker or a defense in this draft. I'm going to I hope no one's listening and steals my strategy, but I'm going to draft sleepers late and then just worry about kickers and defenses a couple of days before week 1. Just so just like if I draft the sleepers late and like some of them get cut, then I get the sleepers I want anyway. So I think you just have to go for more upside. If you're drafting this early or even like early to mid-August, I would not draft a kicker or defense in your league and just wait until a couple days before week 1. So it's my advice, even though earlier I said I'm not an expert.
I think you're an expert, Walt. You're an expert in my book, bro.
Hey, thank you. I said that because some people might disagree. But some people might agree. I have no idea. So you can judge based on what I say. So that's it for this week. You can follow Kenny at fantasyjabber.com and on Twitter at fantasyjabber. What do you have going on your website this week?
Not much. You can follow me on Twitter. Got lots of news and notes. So I'm constantly tweeting out all the news. So if you need a news source, at FantasyJabber, best news source in the web.
Absolutely. Like I see, like I go on Twitter sometimes and I see a story. I'm like, and then I see you. I'm like, oh, nice. Like, I didn't know that. So yeah, you're definitely worth a follow at FantasyJabber. I'm at waltzforfootball.com. Plenty of fantasy football content already, and 2020 NFL draft content for those of you itching for the draft. And the NBA draft is coming up, so we have 2 2019 NBA mock drafts on the website. So yeah, that's it. I will talk to you next week, and see you later.
You the man, Walt.
All right, see you. Bye.
Now, anyone watching this on YouTube, I apologize. It's going to be a harsh cut because I'm having trouble with my computer over here.
No. So talk about nothing for a little bit.
We're just gonna. All right. So anyone watching this, we're done. But have a great day. We're glad to have you. We'll make sure we edit this out for the podcast.
It's the Walter Football After Hour.
Walter After Dark.
Right.
Wait a minute. That sounds weird.
Well, it's like it's the Peach Pit After Dark for all you 90210 fans. Where like I don't know if you've ever watched it, but like 90210, they had this restaurant called the Peach Pit. And it was like this Holy Family restaurant, like the 50s restaurant, whatever. It was a nice place. And then all of a sudden in like season 6, there's like a Peach Pit After Dark, like in the basement. There's like this nightclub. It's like, what? this is like this like Holy Family restaurant turned into a Rager nightclub. Like what?
What?
Made no sense.
The 90s. They were a grand time. So
I love 90210. Great.